Hi everyone. Today our group is going to be talking about the difference in ethics between engineers and lawyers. As Dr. Kirkham mentioned last week, this could be a pretty short discussion, but we'll try and reach it out to the 10 minutes. We've chosen the Institution of Engineers Australia Code of Ethics. Should be on the screen right there. Yep. So you guys should all be familiar with this, being engineers. As you all know, the role of an engineer in society is to improve the quality of life and serve the community by creating and maintaining infrastructure and devices of all kinds. The role of a lawyer, or their expectations by society, is to interpret and apply law as best serves their client or the Commonwealth's interests. This next slide represents the Code of Ethics for lawyers. As you can see, there's not a lot there. In fact, lawyers only have the law to guide their actions. They don't have a code of ethics in Australia. They do, however, have a national code of conduct, and that's put out by the Law Council of Australia. The Engineers Australia Code of Ethics is comprised of 3 cardinal principles and 9 tenets. Once again, you should all be familiar with that. This forms a foundation from which engineers can obtain guidance for their actions. It's a mixture of utilitarian, which we've highlighted in red, and deontological and Kantian, which we've highlighted in green. It's a mixture of both doctrines to get the strength of both sides. This document is the Code of Conduct put out by the Law Council of Australia. It gives lawyers a guideline from which they can serve their community interests within a legal framework. Unfortunately, the consequence of acting in a just manner is sometimes necessary for a lawyer to go against their personal ethical principles. Now, there have been past legal decisions which are based on the community's ethical expectations, which are now part of the legal system, and now they've been passed as laws. And these give lawyers a legal interpretation of the ethical choices which are possible. They're able to use these to act in a way which respects their client or the Commonwealth's interests, while still being as ethical, I suppose, as they can. Just to clarify the lawyer's position, they have an expectation from the community to act in a just manner, but not an ethical manner. To act justly is to apply the law as it's written, without fear or favour.
Okay, in order to further highlight the difference and similarities between engineers and lawyers, we're going to present you with a plausible case study to just kind of walk you through it. We've got Devon Castles of Questionable Engineering Solutions Limited, and he's contracted by Sir Moneybags to design and build a power station. The burner technology for this power station has a couple of drawbacks. It requires a lot of maintenance. So Moneybags, in order to maximise profit, has decided that there will be no safety precautions, no maintenance of these burners. And unfortunately, this means that there's very high risk of them exploding violently. So we then have our lawyer on this side, who's going to be stared at and will be introduced later on. Both the engineer and the lawyer are expected to act in a way that is according to the respective codes of ethics and conduct. So there's a private meeting between Devon Castles and Sir Moneybags to discuss the possible risks with the power station as it stands. And Devon Castles approaches Sir Moneybags in this private meeting, which is not recorded. Sir Moneybags shows little regard for the concerns, and he insists that production goes ahead as planned.
My code of ethics states that I must inform myself and my client of the likely consequences of my actions. I have, but Sir Moneybags still wants to go ahead with this dangerous project. I have to think of the interests of my community. I wonder if I should go public with this information. I think I might be right to, but if I do, I'll most certainly be sued and probably lose my job. I have a mortgage to pay and I've got to look after my wife and kids. Sir Moneybags knows what he's doing. I'm sure everything will be fine.
Okay, 5 years later, there's an explosion. And lots of people die. And the people that aren't dead are very angry about the exploding. So we now have Sir Moneybags, who's going to hire a lawyer, Mr. Stern. He just wants the court case over as soon as possible because he's in danger of missing a cruise that he's booked. So Ms. Jaydan decided that she's not going to pursue the matter any further.
Ms. Adam, Black African lawyer,
My code of practice states I must diligently and competently advocate for my client and always remain frank and honest in court. I must seek to advance and protect my client's interests to the best of my skill, irrespective of my personal view of the client. I must also preserve the confidentiality of information my client is trusting me with. I do not have to pursue every suspicion I may have. That's the prosecution's job after all.
So Moneybags pleads ignorance in court, and he claims that he was not notified and he couldn't have known the potential risks involved because he has no technical or engineering background. Ms. Jaydan defends her client on the basis that the prosecution cannot provide sufficient evidence of him being notified. So Moneybags is found not guilty, and he enjoys his cruise on the liner, which he didn't miss. At Devon Castle's trial, he insists that he did notify Moneybags, but unfortunately no one can verify this. Mr. Castles admits that he was aware of the risks and he was aware of the explosion and the fire and the death from the anger.
After a lengthy and very public trial, he was in jail for negligently failing to address the problems in the power station design, even though I already told Moneybags of the problem. To do more would have probably landed me in court anyway, and I would have lost my job. I wish I had the courage to act ethically. At least the accident could have been avoided. I should have documented my actions in alerting Moneybags to the dangers of the project.
Well, that's Moneybags was a thoroughly greedy and selfish man, but I met my duty to him admirably. I acted justly and according to my code of conduct by arguing for him based on the principles of law and justice and by not breaching his confidentiality. I suspect he knew the problems, and certainly he should have, who was his power station after all, and he showed no remorse at all. I don't think he acted entirely ethical matter, and neither did I. And what else could I have done? If I had asked him more about what he had told him, I may have been forced to withdraw from the case and would have lost a very good client. That guy had a lot of money. Woman wants some money. Of course, I would have continued and I'd lied before myself or put the client on stand and asked him what he made aware of the consequences by Mr. Castles before the operation of the guns. Then both answered yes, though I would still lose my client, I would go to prison. If he answered no, I would have had the obligation to inform the judge of his perjury and thus have deliberately breached his confidentiality. I would never be allowed to practice law again. Much better to act justly and self-respecting and forget it all over a nice glass of wine and the episode of MasterChef. Girl, why is there so many laws on that show?